Everybody, welcome to another House of Lasers tutorial. Um, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse, but there's so much content and so much to understand about doing photos. And between scripts and one-touch programs online, um, it doesn't matter if you have those and use those if you're not putting good content into it. Basically, crap in and crap out. And um, right here we have a really good photo, but it's not laser ready. Would it engrave okay? Yes. Can we get a lot more detail and make it look fantastic? Absolutely. And I really want to cover that because I want you guys to be successful. I don't believe there's a lot of money in making these. Um, but it is a good way to promote yourself. It is a great way to create memorable pieces for people. And in that way, um, you could be rich. Touching people's hearts, there's definitely a niche for that. Um, like I said, it's not going to make you rich, but um, but it's possible to really get business from this beyond the photos just because you're showing people what you can do with a laser beam. So let's get started real quick. First thing I want to do is I want to remove the background. And in Photoshop, I'm using my right click, my magic eraser tool. I have it set to a tolerance of 20, and the higher the tolerance goes, the more it's going to capture. So I'm going to click on these light blues. If I had the tolerance higher, it would probably bleed into his shirt and other places, maybe even some of his hairs, the light grays or the bluish grays. And then, of course, if I'm grabbing too much, then I could always lower the tolerance even more. But this 20 seems to be a great spot to start with. I'm just going to knock this out real quick just to show you how this works. Now, like I said, the photo prep is huge. And you could take a photo that is fairly decent and that would engrave well to an amazing photo. Right now I'm going to go to Eraser Tool. I'm going to increase the size of my pointer here, or my tool real quick, just to clean up all of the outside edges. And if you see down on the bottom, it took away, one, the watermark, two, it took away part of, I guess her arm was coming across here. And that's okay because I'm going to use the feather option and a crop tool really quickly and basically feather that out a little bit. And another key, which if you've watched the other videos, um, you hear the clicking in the background, make sure you let off of your button um, often. Mostly because if you erased all of this background and went over everything and then you accidentally went across her face, you would basically undo, but you would be undoing all of the stuff that you've already done. So make steps, make it easy for yourself to basically fix your mistakes quickly. Okay, so it looks like I got a lot of the stuff out of there. Zoom in real quick just to see um, if there's little fat fragments in here, they will show up because we're going to use Photoshop or Corel to accentuate everything in this photo. And that also means the crap that's left behind, and we really don't want that. All right, okay, so now I'm going to go over to my rectangular marquee tool. Um, I really just want to fade out and cut away stuff that I don't need. So if we do this right here, then I right click again and I hit feather. I have it as a radius of 30, and what that's going to do is extend in and out the feathering effect. So the higher you go, the larger the feather. Click OK. You can't see it yet. And the reason for that is because you have to use that line that you've just created, that feather, to crop. Right click again, create a new layer, and you could either do it via copy or via cut. I do it via cut, and I'm going to actually delete this because I don't need it. And I'm actually going to go back in there and show you guys. I don't like the way that's going to look. It's going on an ornament, which is going to be round, so I'm going to oval this out quite a bit. So if we go back and we do elliptical, and we do it like that. So I just have to be careful that I'm not going to feather some of his hair away. That. We'll do the same thing. Feather. Okay. Right click again. Cut. And we missed his hair. We're good. And now I can get rid of this. Trash it. Okay, so another huge thing to remember is that try to slide it down to the bottom. So you're going to select on your cursor tool, slide it down, and then you're going to decrease the size of your canvas. And the reason you need to do that, if you saved it right now, it's going to save with these boundaries. And trying to align this rather than at the top of his head, you're going to be aligning up here on the laser, which makes it a little bit more difficult. I mean, you could always align it down at the bottom, but say you had it centered. You have all of this area that has no information in it that will be part of the canvas. So we'll go to image, we'll go to canvas size, and the height is actually 9.8. Let's bring it down to 7 and see where it goes. And I can move them back up a little bit. And I may have to extend it to like 7.5. Image, canvas size, 7.5, and perfect. So now we're good. So luckily on this photo, I don't have a lot to do as far as shadows and highlights and correcting the image um, tone or brightness, because this is a professional photo. It has good lighting. There's no shadows that are going to distract um, from moving forward for the most part. So if we go, I am going to try to get a little bit more contrast though. So if I go to brightness contrast, and on this one, use what you're comfortable with. Um, I tend to like to use Legacy. I I feel like it has a little bit different feel to it. Let's go back to the other one. And really what I'm trying to do is really pronounce some of these lines in the faces. I am going to quickly, and I know I said we weren't going to or we didn't need to, and we don't. It was a pretty darn good photo already. But like I said, I really want some of these things to really be highlighted. And we're going to go up on the offset just a hair. Now see some of her hair is starting to come out as I go up on the offset. And this is stuff that you need to look for. You know, if you can see hairs, um, we can make that pronounced in the laser engraving. So we're going to want to make those stand out. And since I am starting to get some more, I am going to touch it up just a little bit with the shadows highlights. And just to see if I can get any more of those hair follicles to really show. And just pay attention to uh, starting to get some discoloration and stuff like that. But as long as we're pronouncing all of the angles of the face, there we go. All right. So now we're starting to get a lot of detail in the hair. And it may seem kind of like a mute point, but it's important. The better that you are recreating the image and giving it life, the more impressed people are going to be and want this product. So now we're going to go to Filter, Sharpen, and Unsharpen Mask. And the further the threshold is towards the bottom, the crazier it's going to get with whites. So if we look at his hair, we're starting to see some really pronounced whiting in the light areas, which is exactly what we want. Filter, then I'm going to do a Smart Sharpen. So with Smart Sharpen, we are looking for edge detail. We don't want to start getting a whole bunch of pixelation, which is kind of what's happening. So we'll just back down a little bit. So what's really neat about my process um, that you can use is you can do multiple times the same process. So we're going to do that right now. I'm going to go to Filter, Stylize, and I'm going to do Oil Paint. I absolutely love the oil paint because it takes some of those dots, that the crazy pixelation that we get, and it flattens it out a little bit. And it can make it look a little oil painty, a little portrait look to it. But that's good because as opposed to print, this is exactly what we want. We want that oil painting look because it transfers, for some reason, it transfers really, really well into laser engraving. It has the right properties that are necessary for the laser to see. So now that I've done the oil painting, I'm going to go back and I'm going to hit it with the sharpen again. I'm going to do a smart sharpen again. Yeah, and we can push this a little bit to see how far we can go before we start getting this really that whiting area, um, some of this stuff. Now back down just a little bit, but some of that is good to have because the laser can only replicate darks and lights. So anything that's going to allow facial features to be seen and pronounced, that's what we want. Okay, let's see. I'm fairly confident that if we do an unsharp mask again, it's going to be too much. Yes. So this is way too much. So we'll leave that alone. And we'll go into the filter again, and we'll do stylize, oil paint. Just flattens everything out just enough. All of these hairs are going to show up. All of these lines on the shirt, the brush strokes, and that's really what it comes down to. It almost looks like brush strokes for her hair now. And this will end up being excellent for laser engraving. And I'm going to go into my mixer brush tool real quick. And I kind of want to define her chin and her jawline a little bit better. So I'm just going, basically what the mixer brush is, it's grabbing the color you're clicking on and you're able to drag it across. And I really just kind of want that definition. And if you want to, you could blend stuff together. If you wanted to get rid of wrinkles, if you wanted to get rid of um, some objects that are in there, maybe you have an old photo that that has some dust particles, you can easily blend that right together. We'll bring this down a little bit. And that's really it. Just adjusting it enough that it's exaggerated for the laser. And sometimes what I'll do is I'll go in and lighten the eyes a little bit, just because that's an important feature that you need to see when you're engraving. So if you have to go in and lighten that, very easy to do. In fact, I'll lighten her left eye real quick. Brush tool, soft lighten. There's hard lighten. There is just straight up lighten, and we'll use that. I will zoom in, and I can just click just a little bit and just lighten it up just enough. Now, we know what we did, but the customer will never know. We're not changing anything. We're just accentuating some of these features so that they show up really well for laser engraving. Your opacity, um, it'll still retain some of the features behind it. So if we had this line here, but you wanted to make it lighter, you're making it lighter across the board, but it still retains stuff behind. And you could always create different layers, copy layers, and work on those so you retain the original photo and you can go back and forth and switch and see exactly what you're getting. So for this photo, we're done. I'm going to drop it into Lightburn. Let me make sure, let me back out just a hair. Image, let me just check my file size. We're already at a 400 dpi. I'm going to shrink the size of the photo. When we do that, it actually shrinks the size of the canvas at the same time. So let's see here. We're going to make it 4. It ends up proportioning itself, so 4 by 3.7. I'm going to do 1000 dpi. Now these are huge. If you need to send a proof to the client to see and make sure that they like your edits, then maybe you want to keep it reduced a little bit, but I'm sending 1000 dpi to Lightburn because I want it to have the most information to create the best Jarvis or halftone pattern that it can. Okay. And like I said, that is a little bit of information, so it may take a second, but it was already at 400, so we were working with something that was pretty substantial. File, I export, always export as a PNG. If you export as a bitmap, all of this transparency in the background will end up being white or black depending on how you have it set up. And you don't want that because depending on if you're doing a negative engrave, it'll show up. It'll, if you had a white background and you did a negative engrave, it's going to engrave that white background. And that's not something you want. We want no background whatsoever, only the photo. PNG will save, will keep the transparency intact. So file, export, quick export as a PNG, and it's already listed there. We're going to put it in our photo edit section and save. And we'll pick this back up in Lightroom. So I'm not thinking that this really needs a fancy font, but I'll take a look and see what I have available.
Maybe something like that would work. And I'll send it off to the client and make sure that they approve. I'm going to bend it just a little bit. There we go. And I'm going to toggle the fill render real quick just so I can see what that looks like. If I go to preview, I'm usually going to get something funky like that. Like we can invert it, but still, I would much rather see it the way that it's going to hopefully engrave. So if I go to my gear and I do fill render, it is slower. It's doing a little bit more processing. This outer line is a cut line, and there we go. So that's what the engraving would look like. To the line, okay, good. And really the only thing left is to create a quick little hole up here. It's going to be blue. And this is one reason why I don't work with the rendered, because I can't see my lines behind. And that we're going to do an inside offset, inward offset. Perfect. We attach these two together. Click, select, and there we have it. And we'll shoot this over to the laser and see exactly what it looks like, and we'll make sure that the customer likes it, and then we'll show you the finished product. So before I go out there and out into my garage where my laser is, I just want to explain really quick some of these photo processes. So if we go to image and we double click, we have pass through, and that's if you use one of those one-click programs to process it, or a script to process it, you would be using pass through. This way Lightburn does not touch it. It will automatically control the DPI and the dither pattern based on what you've done outside of Lightburn. But Lightburn does a good enough job by itself, especially if we bring it in the way I taught you. It does an amazing job. So a couple things to note in here. Negative image. We're doing on acrylic. We want the highlights to show up, the light areas to show up, the whites and light grays and what have you. So on acrylic, when you engrave it, it turns white. So that's how we know that that's what we want it to look like. If you did it regular, it would look like a negative photo and not very impressive. Speed. We are laying millions of dots down, and the faster you go, the less time the laser has to pulse. They can pulse extremely fast, but you're trying to lay as much information as possible. And the faster you go, the more opportunities there are for you to lose that information. So with dither, any of the dither processes, so Atkinson's dither, Stuckey, Jarvis, all of those for photos, high quality photos, I keep it between 8 and 14, and I really don't, 14 inches per second. I don't go much faster than that. Grayscale, you're going to be slower because it is maintaining, the tube is staying on the entire time and it's fluctuating power. So you have to go slower on that one. And halftone as well. Halftone's another one where I'm 8 to 14. It is laying a more detailed method of dots, but I can get really close to quality with Jarvis. So if you're using halftone, the DPI is really almost double what you can run with a Jarvis. Sometimes you can get a lot better quality, sometimes it's nominal, and it doesn't really make any sense to run something 2 times as long if you can achieve the same result with running a different process. So I'm running Jarvis. I tend to like this for almost all of my dithering engraving. I'm going to keep it, I'm running a 1.5 inch lens on a 100-watt machine, and I'm going to run 400 DPI. I could run my high definition lens, and I could probably bring that up to about 600 DPI. But then again, like I said, I want it to look good, but I don't want to I don't want it taking forever. Mostly because I know what I'm getting out of these, how much money they can make, and the more that I can make, the better I'm going to be to pay for this machine and pay for the material and my time. So here I am at 10 inches per second, minimum power that you can to make the photo quality appear on the substrate. And what I mean by that is the higher power you go, the more you're obliterating everything around those little tiny dots you're trying to lay. So if you want high quality, it's about just tapping the surface. Think about tattoos or something else where they're using needle points to lay these little tiny dots to fill in the shading and the paint into under your skin. Think of it the same way. You are laying little tiny dots with a needle. If you raise the power too much, that little tiny dot increases. And next thing you know, the substrate can't handle it. And you're basically obliterating everything around that dot, losing quality, and it might as well just be whitewashed. Okay, so we have that explained. Min power on a dithered situation does not matter. It could be 0, it could be nothing, it could be whatever you want it to be. Scan angle, I'm at 180 degrees because typically on most of your engravings at 0, it starts down here and it goes the other way around. 0. So it starts here and it goes boom, 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 boom. 180 degrees. I want to see the hair. I want to see the eyes. So if I have to stop it, I can save my material and my time. So I'm starting at 180 degrees. It's starting up top, coming down, and then it's filling in the torso and maybe a tie or some buttons, but the face, which is the most important part, I get to see first, and I can stop it and adjust quickly. Last thing, shape properties. If I select the image, then I can control the properties of the image. And I tend to find that light burn engraves darker. Or in Photoshop, it might look lighter. So I tend to really lighten it up a little bit in here. And this is up to you. This is whatever you think it needs. Again, don't wash it out. You can go too crazy with it, but lighten it enough that you're going to make a difference and see the engraving well. All right, I think we're good. We've covered all of our bases. I am going to click on this one more time. So speed, you should know your machine. So keep the speed low. Power, print out a power grid or create your own power grid using one of our videos, and find out where your machine turns on. That's very important because you want to be just above that We are just tapping the surface of the material to make these pictures look good. Your DPI, be careful of how far you push it. It's all dependent on laser size, so tube size, your lens. So if you're the smaller lens you go with, so 1.5 inch lens is what I'm using, the more DPI you can get out of it because the dot is smaller. 180 degrees to see what we're getting quicker. Jarvis is my choice for processing, and negative image. And we're good to go. Let's see the result. So as it's running in the background, the only thing that I wanted to stress as well is we need to flip it. We are going to engrave on the back side of it. So for acrylic, it's typically a better result if you engrave in reverse like that. This way, the part that people are touching is always flat and cleanable. It's not porous, and it just looks better with that glossy feel. The quality is just better. So make sure you mirror the image before you go ahead and do that.